Turn up the POS dial. It's time for some shitty games. Jurassic Park. If you haven't seen it, it's a classic movie about how dinosaurs were resurrected and put into a theme park. Except that everything goes wrong and people get eaten. It's definitely worth seeing. On a miscellaneous note, the franchise drives actual paleontologists nuts because the movies are grossly inaccurate. But I digress. For a lack of a more colorful term, this game annoyed me growing up. It's a game that I tried to get into, but I found it too difficult to play. That argument still stands. Lo and behold, my frustration with this game is explained by who the developer was. Blue Sky Software. Blue Sky Software doesn't really sound like a developer anyone knew or knows. I mean, I didn't know about them until I looked up some information for this review. But it's actually a subsidiary of, wait for it, Titus Software. The infamous creators of shit like Blues Brothers for the Super Nintendo or the infamous Bubsy. This is f***ing bullshit. They were also the folks behind one of the Ren and Stimpy games, some sports games, and the Vector Man games. Outside of a few titles, they didn't really make anything for the Super Nintendo. I will start with the only redeeming quality of this game. The visuals in the game are pretty well done. But you could polish a turd all day long and it's still a turd. The Mythbusters proved you could polish a turd. As Grant from the movies, your goal is to escape the island. This game might as well be called Jurassic Cheap Shots or Cheap Shot Park. Those dinosaurs have some goddamn pretty good accuracy, and often you'll feel like the game is cheating you. The level design is nothing to write home about either. Probably the worst level in the game is level 2 as Grant at the power station. As you can see here, even if you manage to fall a little bit, you take damage. After getting all this way, it's impossible for me to progress because the fall damage ends up killing me. If you die, you go back to the start of the level. That's par for the course, but absolutely cheap! The challenge of the game lies not in figuring out how to defeat your enemies, but how to successfully navigate with slippery controls and a bad camera. You can pretty much take down any dinosaur with almost any tool at your disposal. The game would have been much more playable if you had to somehow defeat your enemies in a very specific way. Would have been more entertaining too. Now the boat level, which is level 3 as Grant, is also horseshit. Although not as bad, this level kind of reminds me of a game I've reviewed before. What was it?
No. We're giving them too much credit. Instead of playing a memory game with me, let's design better levels that make me feel like I'm part of the game, you know? Furthermore, why do they always make these Hollywood remakes so effing retarded?
Another complaint I have is with the moving boxes and static objects. I don't show it in the footage, but if you move something out of place and you can't move it back, you've blocked yourself from going any further. You either have to die or reset, and that's just bullshit. There's some very minor elements of puzzling, and I believe if they took advantage of that type of design, then this game would have been on a much better track. Now that I mention it, the game also plays a lot like Metal Morph.
Reminds me of a Nickelodeon show called Alex Mack or something. Now, the controls are good, and at least the music to the very first level is pretty kick-ass. But this game misses the big picture.
Why did you do that?
So, Jurassic Park is obviously flawed. Does that mean it's still fun? Well, that's subjective. And my answer is no. If you get past level 2, then my hats are off to you. But remember that when you lose all of your lives, those little bars, you die. Game over. You go back to the Sega logo. The game's replayability factor lies in how much patience you have as you continue to enter passwords multiple times to keep advancing, and thank God the password isn't too long. They probably figured that if a person was patient enough, they'd keep trying and they would eventually get some play out of it. Despite how long the game seems, it's actually very short, even for a 90s era game. You paralyze dinosaurs, try to platform with slippery and unresponsive controls while attempting to remain alive from cheap shots. It's not my idea of a Saturday afternoon having fun. It could also have been so much more, but the curse of the bad developers botching big-name movies through video games afflicted this one. I'm gonna give it a 49.3 out of 100. With that, it just beats out Pocahontas for the Game Boy, and it's right there with Muppets. Chaos at the Carnival. People raved about this game when it came out, and I've got no idea why. Given a mindset to judge this game for what it was in the time that it was released, it's a turd. Walks like a turd, breathes like a turd, it's like a turd, it's a turd.